The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear, as one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here right now. In the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow, I thank you for joining today. So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. In our last episode, we talked about Abraham growing older in age and how he sent his servant to go back to the homeland and select a wife for Isaac. And we talked about how God just showed out with Rebecca and how she was everything that the servant could have asked for. And so the servant talked to Rebecca's family, told them everything that was going on, and then Rebecca ended up going back with the servant to meet Isaac. So Isaac and Rebecca met. They weren't mad about it, in this arranged marriage, and so they got married. And uh, so in this episode, we see that Abraham is aging. We knew that, but interestingly enough, despite the fact that last episode it was like Abraham was aged, so he's like, "Oh man, like I'm getting so old. Find this wife for my son." And in this following chapter, Abraham gets married again. Last episode, Sarah passed away, so she's laid to rest. But Abraham's not done, so he ends up marrying this other woman named Keturah. And they have all these sons, and one of the sons is, I just wanted to note this because I was gonna skip over this little part, but Abraham marries a chick, Keturah, they have babies. And so one of the sons that he had with Keturah, his name is Midian. And it's important that I make that note because Midian is the ancestor of these people that we'll talk about in the future called the Midianites. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The Midianites were descendants of this son that Abraham had with this other woman named Keturah. Okay, so Abraham's about to die and he gives everything that he owns to Isaac. But he also gives his other sons like a little consolation prize almost. He gives them a gift before he sends them away from Isaac. So it's like, oh, Isaac, my beloved son. And then to the others, it's like, yo, here, take this gift. I love y'all too, but y'all gotta go, like, because Isaac needs room to to carry on this covenant promise and to grow in blessings. And so at 175 years old, Abraham bites the dust, so to speak, and he Isaac and Ish, they take Abraham back to the cave in Machpelah, where remember we talked about the land that Abraham bought when Sarah died. So it was like their permanent burial plot. So they buried him there. And so moving on, Isaac and Rebecca, they get married. They got married. But Rebecca was unable to bear children, which is a little problem, right? Because now that Abraham has passed away and Isaac is the one who's carrying on this covenant promise that they would have a multitude of descendants and God would bless nations through them, and that they would take the land of the Canaanites and all of that. Like that promise was to pass through Isaac and his bloodline. But if Isaac is unable to have children with Rebecca, then there's a problem. So Isaac prays. He prays over his wife and he asks God to fix the problem at the root of the problem and to allow for Rebecca to be able to bear children. Husbands, pray over your wives. Don't just accept the problem as a problem. Um, Wives, pray over your husbands. Don't just accept the problem as a problem. Like, we just pray for who you are with, because even if you haven't committed to being married yet. Prayer is powerful. So pray for one another. God hears. Um, so anyway, Isaac prays. Next thing you know, Rebecca's pregnant. And not only is she pregnant, again, when the Lord when he comes through, and he comes through, he shows up and he shows out. So she's pregnant, but not just with one child, she's pregnant with twins. But her pregnancy is a little troublesome because they were struggling in her womb. Like these guys were arm wrestling and doing these ninja kicks and all kinds of stuff. So Rebecca talks to God and she's like, I'm so grateful that you made the impossible possible and that you blessed me with these babies. But what's going on in there? And God told her, he's like, so you're pregnant with twins, but they're not just babies. You are actually pregnant with two nations, and those nations are rivaling nations. Like from the jump, you are pregnant with two rival nations and they are in your womb right now, and this is how it's going to play out. The younger one is actually, excuse me, the older one is actually going to serve the younger one, which was unheard of because back in those times, typically the oldest son would be the one who would receive what they call the birthright and the blessing. And essentially, because the older son received the birthright and the blessing, it was the youngest sons or the youngest children that would serve the oldest. But here, God is saying, no, the older is going to serve the younger. So, moving on, Rebecca is like, okay, she hears that from God, and it's kind of like, that's not making sense. The rival nations, it's like things are just kind of getting out of order because the oldest is gonna serve the younger. Like, okay, but she has these babies, and Esau comes out. He comes out of the womb. He's this hairy baby, and he came out all red and everything. So they call him Esau because Esau means hairy. And then Jacob was like right on his heel. Literally, he was grabbing onto Esau's heel so they came out like back to back, grabbing onto Esau's heel when they were delivered. And so they named him Jacob because it means heel grabber, but it also means deceiver. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But um, so sometimes parents try to act like they don't have favorites, but um, it was very clear that that Isaac favored Esau because he was outdoorsy, like he was the man's man, and he was the one you'd get a bow and arrow or a machete or something. You'd get him. That's what you would give him for his birthday present. Whereas Jacob was a mama's boy. Rebecca favored Jacob. He was the one you'd give like a um some oven mitts or like a sewing kit. You'd give him that as a birthday gift. And so one day, um, Jacob was in the kitchen and he's like, man, he is really cooking up this stew, this red lentil stew, and it's smelling all good. Got all the seasonings and the herbs and spices, and it's just like, oh, it's so fragrant. And Esau, he gets back from all this hunting and he's exhausted and he's just like, bro, I'm dying here. I'm so hungry. Like, yo, let me get some of that red lentil stew. And that's how he got the nickname Edom, which means red. And so he went by Esau or Edom. And that's an important note because we'll later hear about the Edomites. And the Edomites are descendants of Esau. Okay, so keep that in mind too. If you're a note taker, take these notes. Okay, the Midianites came from Abraham's son with Keturah, Midian. Okay, and the Edomites are descendants of Esau. All right. So anyway, he's like, yo, let me get some of that stew, man. Like it smells so good. And I'm starving. You hear my stomach growling. me. Like, hook me up, bro. Jacob, an opportunist, and again, a deceiver, is like, yo, it does smell good on it. Yeah. So I'll hook you up with a bowl, but you gotta sell me your birthright. And let me tell you a little bit about birthrights, because I told you before, typically the oldest son was the one who would have the rights to the birthright and the blessing. So the birthright was like a physical inheritance of the estate. So when the father passed away, or before the father passed away, the birthright was that the oldest son would get a double portion of the estate. And so that's like cost of like the land and the livestock and the riches, like all of the possessions. Like the birthright was more of a tangible inheritance. Whereas the blessing, which we'll hear about in a future episode, Lord willing, was more or less it was the passing on of like leadership, authority. It was like passing the torch of the role and the position, like you are the new head of the family. Okay, so here Jacob is like, yo, I'm gonna give you this bowl of stew. Or this, yeah, I'm gonna hook you up with a real good meal. But in exchange for your birthright, I'm gonna take care of what's temporary right now, but I want what's lasting in the future. And Esau's like, whatever, man. Like, what good is a birthright if I'm dead? Like, I'm hungry. Like, just feed me. And so Jacob's like, all right, cool, you got it. And so um we'll stop there. We'll stop there for now. Yeah, we'll stop there for now and we'll pick up a little bit more in the future if the Lord wills me to record another episode. Yeah, thank you again for your time. I'm very grateful for you. Until we meet again, bye for now.